I'm going to be going down to Atlanta to do a meeting with one of my pastor friends, Mark Lawson. And I've got quite a past with Mark. I used to go down there. He pastored a gigantic church. And I go down there, and Mark's over there, and the whole congregation is full, and Charisma magazine and their cameras were there. And so I'm up here to preach. Here it goes. And I'm preaching. The Lord says, Bobby? I said, yes. He said, I have something for Pastor Mark. I said, oh, that's great. I said, Pastor Mark, come up here. The Lord has something for you. So here comes Pastor Mark. He's dressed nice. And he comes up there. There's the guys out there with their cameras, Charisma magazine and all of them. And so I said, okay, here comes Mark. I said, God, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to rotate him over and suck a hickey on his neck. What? What? Packed out people, TV cameras, and God said, I want you to suck a hickey on his neck. Yeah. So there's Mark. He's waiting for the word. I don't recommend this. But I grabbed old Mark, and it looked like a tomato. I sucked a big right place on the side of his head. See, I've learned this. The best thing in the world to do is obey God. I said, Lord, what in the world was that about? He said the pastors are going to have to be marked with passion by the prophetic and marked. We're going to have to cover the pastors with the prophetic, okay? And there's another one that's just a little bit worse than that one. I'm off over there in France. Okay, I'm up there preaching. Paris, France, somewhere in France. I don't know where it was. Anyway, we're there, and I'm up there preaching, and the Lord said, call that fella up. And there was a gentleman sitting out there dressed immaculate, had those little fluffy handkerchiefs and little fluffy things, and a beautiful jacket on. I didn't know that was a guy that you're supposed to be careful with because he can shut in. The Lord said, yeah, he was a political guy. The Lord said, call him up. I said, sir, come up here. God has something for you. And so he comes up like, okay, all right. Do I need security? No. And so here we go. There he is right here. And I said, okay, God, what am I going to do? Okay. He said, I want you to walk over there to him. I want you to rotate him a little bit. And I want you to nibble his ear. What? France. Don't do anything goofy. I want you to nibble his ear. My mouth got so dry, my tongue better to go. I thought, oh, Lord. So there he is. He's immaculate. Got all the trophies and stuff like that. So I'm going to obey God. I said, sir, I've got to do something. And he said, you do whatever you're supposed to do. I said, okay. So I'm starting towards him. And as I'm starting towards him, the Lord said, I mean, really gobble it. I rotated this wealthy gentleman. I rotated him before I could get a good shot of his ear. I took this guy's ear in my mouth. And I started speaking French. I can go to London and I had to have an interpreter. But I started speaking French to this guy. And I'm telling you, it just poured out. He fell at my feet and he looked at me and says, you can do anything you want to do in this city.
Story today, only a quarter of Catholic and mainline pastors definitely believe Adam and Eve existed. So this is looking at a new survey of pastors and what they believe about a variety of different biblical issues, including the existence of a literal Adam and Eve. And in this study, they found that 80% of evangelical pastors and 89% of Black Protestant clergy affirmed with certainty, yes, Adam and Eve really did exist. But then when you get and you start looking at the Catholic priests and the mainline Protestant pastors, that number drops all the way down to just 25%. Only 1 in 4 actually believe what the Bible says about Adam and Eve. The article kind of concluded with looking back to a study back in 2022. That was a different study that looked at pastors, and they found that only 37% of U.S. pastors hold to a biblical worldview. They said that 62% adhere to a hybrid belief system referred to as syncretism. And we see that a lot. Again, with the ideas just in this study, they're very syncretistic. I'm going to pull a little bit from the Bible here because I like this part of the Bible, but then I'm going to pull this from the culture. I'm going to take this from so-called science, really just an interpretation of the evidence based on an evolutionary worldview, and I'm going to put all of that together and make a religion of my own making. And so as Christians, pay attention to what your pastor preaches. Be in a church where your pastor is one of the 37% that actually has a biblical worldview. And the saddest statistic in here was only 12% of children and youth pastors had a biblical worldview. Only 12%. So you think of all these kids who are growing up in the public education system and are going to church on Sunday, and so many parents have sort of farmed out biblical worldview and discipleship to the church and just, the church will teach my kids about the Bible. The church will teach my kids a biblical worldview. Only 12% of the children and youth pastors have that biblical worldview. So no wonder so few young people do when they're not getting it sometimes at home and not getting it at the church with those really sad statistics.
And just because you're not getting those answers that you're searching for at your church doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yes.
That's really why our ministry exists, Answers in Genesis. We want to give people answers to the questions that they face regarding, their religion, regarding science, all these things, because we want to show people that what we see in God's world reflects what we see in His Word, and it supports what we see in His Word. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, His Word is our foundation for everything, and that starts in Genesis. It's true through the rest of the Bible. That foundation beginning in Genesis is true, and therefore the gospel is true.
News alert, the Ayatollah's gone into hiding. He's believed to be holed up inside an underground bunker northeast of the capital. This is a different kind of Iranian hostage crisis. Khomeini can hide, but he can't run. For the past 24 hours, Israel's been attacking the area around his underground lair. But Khomeini, still talking tough, says Iran will not surrender to anyone, and is warning that if America joins the fight and strikes, it'll result in irreparable damage to the United States. Is he bluffing? We don't know. Iranian proxies, which have been severely degraded, are threatening to commit acts of terror against American troops and American ships in the region. And American businesses are now bracing for cyber attacks. Trump says, good luck with that. We won't be bullied.
I was the hunted, and now I'm the hunter. It's a big difference. That means I've had it. Okay, I've had it, I give up, no more. Then we go blow up all all the nuclear stuff that's all over the place there. No, they had bad intentions. For 40 years they've been saying death to America, death to Israel, death to anybody else that they didn't like. They were bullies. They were schoolyard bullies. And now they're not bullies anymore.
Trump's been meeting in the Situation Room with his national security team. Head of Central Command, Army General Eric Kurilla, they call him the Gorilla, has been instrumental in the war planning. The Pentagon's sending in their new state-of-the-art supercarrier, the USS Gerald Ford, and amassing a tremendous amount of assets in the area. Today, Trump had lunch with Pakistan's army chief. Pakistan borders Iran. Seems like something's about to happen. Trump's not showing his cards yet.
Whether you are moving closer or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities. Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question. Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
And this is just breaking. The Wall Street Journal is reporting Trump privately approved attack plans against Iran. Now, we don't know what these plans entail, but we're told they include U.S. airstrikes. Unsure if that includes bunker busters. Remember, the latest version of the bunker buster has never been used on the battlefield. It's only been tested. Axios reports that Trump has been quizzing his generals. Are they sure if he uses them, they'll be 100% effective? The generals say yes. But Trump's not completely convinced. Caroline Leavitt says all options remain on the table. Trump's been waiting on giving the final order, seeing if the Iranians give up and surrender their nuke program peacefully. Sources in D.C. say Trump's out of patience and Iran's up against the clock.
I believe that unless Iran surrenders in the next 48 hours, the United States, in conjunction with Israel, will engage in military action.
Trump says the Iranians want to fly all the way to the White House to negotiate an end to this. But he says it's too late. He doesn't appear to be open to long, drawn-out negotiations where he gets strung along like last time.
We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
Trump's made a decision. Iran's nuclear program is gone. The person who ultimately decides that is the Ayatollah. He can either let us do it peacefully or we'll do it violently. But either way, the outcome of this war is this. The Iranians will never be able to acquire a nuclear weapon, ever. But time's running out for both sides. Israel's reportedly running low on defensive interceptors, and Iran's reportedly running low on missiles. Iran's also running out of allies. They don't have any friends left in the region. And China, their biggest customer, quiet. And Putin, he has his own problems.
I spoke to him yesterday, and I said, he actually offered to help mediate. I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later.
The Persians are pinned up against the wall. They've been completely humiliated by a tiny Jewish nation, a fraction of the size of Iran. And now the Daily Wire is reporting that the Mossad set up a fake hotline in Iran and ordered top Iranian military officials into an emergency meeting. And the generals were alerted to a small bunker in Tehran before Israel wiped them out with a precision airstrike. And inside of the country, you're starting to see unrest. Sanctions have crippled their economy so badly that workers are rioting over delayed payments. Manufacturers are striking over high inflation. Schools, cement factories, and pharmaceutical plants are shutting down. The Iranian currency is getting shredded. And Israel's hitting Iranian energy infrastructure, which is going to create price shocks and shortages. So with the streets teetering and its military commanders assassinated, a nuke might be the Ayatollah's only hope. No one really knows how fast they could spin up a device and strap it into a warhead, but Trump says they're only a few weeks away. Back in March, Tulsi Gabbard said the Iranians were enriching uranium at record levels.
In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons.
So will the United States end Iran's nuclear program with a 30,000-pound bunker buster? Or can Israel end it themselves? Israel admits they have options. They could knock out the power plants that run the underground nuke facility. And since they control the air, Israeli commandos could be inserted and fight their way in and then detonate the site with dynamite. If America does it, there would be consequences, nuclear contamination, and internationally there could be some fallout, although I'm sure Trump could handle it. Either way, the Iranians would retaliate and the United States would have to go back onto a war footing in the Middle East. The whole world's watching. It's the biggest moment of the Trump presidency. China and Russia surveying the scene, and so are our trade partners. We're at this moment in history because of Obama and Biden. They signed a toothless nuke deal that let the Iranians keep enriching and let them keep their ballistic missiles, and paid them billions of dollars, which they used to finance their war machine and proxies. Proxies which have been killing Americans for decades. Marines in Beirut, soldiers in Iraq, and taking Americans hostage in Gaza and inside of Iran. American deterrence, backed by the threat of violence, is what maintains order in the world. And sometimes there comes a time when the commander-in-chief has to use force to nourish the deterrence and keep the American people safe. Is this one of those times? We're about to find out.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Iran will pay the full price. He made that promise after Iranian missiles hit a hospital in Tel Aviv. along with other residential buildings.
That latest attack comes as President Trump is deciding whether or not the United States military will join Israel in striking Iran.
The Soroka Hospital in Beersheba took a direct hit. One of the doctors there stated, "Just yesterday, we evacuated the old surgical building that took a direct hit today. It's a great miracle." As Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz put it, these are the most severe kinds of war crimes, and Khamenei will be held accountable for his crimes. Katz described Israel's new goal, destabilize the Ayatollah regime. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Trump has approved the Iran attack plans, but is holding off on giving the orders, according to the Wall Street Journal. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, Trump says he's not looking for a fight with Iran.
But if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
In an address to the nation Wednesday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked the president for standing by Israel and told Israelis the goals of the war.
We've embarked on this operation to eliminate two existing threats to the state of Israel, the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat. We're moving step by step towards eliminating these threats. We control the skies over Tehran. We're striking the Ayatollah's regime with tremendous force. We're striking the nuclear weapons, the missiles, the headquarters, the symbols of the regime.
Despite the attacks, Ayatollah Khamenei remains defiant.
The Iranian nation will stand firmly against the war imposed on it, as it has done so far. It will also stand firmly against imposed peace. The Iranian nation will not surrender to anyone aiming to impose anything on it.
Yet the Israel Defense Forces are now expanding their target list.
During the strikes, we struck more than 20 targets around Tehran. These targets belong to the regime's military industries and security apparatus.
Morning, a striking plume of volcanic ash and smoke looming over Indonesia. The massive eruption soaring miles into the sky and blanketing nearby villages in volcanic debris.
The latest conditions we know per this morning is eruptions are still occurring, and the impacts of these eruptions include ashfall with stones.
In the shadow of the ominous mushroom cloud, visible for 100 miles around, authorities placing the area on high alert and evacuating villagers.
It was terrifying. There was fog and the smoke was red.
At an airport on the popular resort island of Bali, something not often seen on U.S. departure boards, dozens of flights canceled or delayed due to volcano. Travelers stranded in the airport for hours. Mount Liwatobi Laki is perched along the Pacific Ring of Fire, a chain of some of the most active volcanoes in the world. At Liwatobi, in recent months, dangerously restless, with an eruption last November killing 9 people, hurting dozens more, and forcing thousands to evacuate. So far, no casualties reported during this round of activity, but Indonesia's geologic agency warning nearby residents about possible rivers of lava that could be triggered by heavy rainfall. This year, volcanoes blowing up travel plans around the world. In Sicily 2 weeks ago, Mount Etna spewing ash and smoke, shutting down Catania Airport and sending nearby hikers scrambling for cover. Although earlier this year, skiers took to the slopes on the same volcano, racing the lava down the mountainside. And in Iceland, a volcanic eruption in April, forcing residents and tourists alike to evacuate. But even in this part of Indonesia, where volcanoes are part of everyday life, this eruption leaving residents shaken.
This is the first time I have seen an eruption this big.
In a land shaped by fire, nature showing it can still surprise.